Well, Sub-Saharan African countries are setting themselves up as so-called tax havens, places where the wealthy can conceal cash from their own nations. But as VOA senior analyst Jeffrey Young discusses with several activist NGOs, such activity creates losers as well as winners on the African continent.
Africa's wealth for years has been drained from the continent, with some of it going to places where it is kept from taxation. Now, a report by an activist NGO says some sub-Saharan African states are getting into the cash-hiding game themselves. The Tax Justice Network's chief executive explains why some countries want to be tax havens. Via Skype from Oxford, England, Alex Cobham.
They're finding a way to let people elsewhere avoid the regulation or the taxation that they would otherwise face. And in exchange for that, the jurisdiction normally takes a small fee one way or another. That could be the fee for setting up a company, or it could be a very minimal level of taxation compared to what should have been paid. So being a tax haven is a way of undermining everyone else.
The Tax Justice Network's recently released Financial Secrecy Index ranks Switzerland at the top of the list, followed in order by the United States, the Cayman Islands, Hong Kong, and Singapore. The highest sub-Saharan African nation on the secrecy index in 27th place is Kenya, which in recent years has been moving aggressively to set itself up as a tax haven. Liberia is the second highest SSA country, ranking 38th. Mauritius and South Africa are 49th and 50th, respectively. The Tax Justice Network says that from the 1970s to 2010, more than $1 trillion was concealed and taken out of Africa, as discussed by Washington-based NGO Global Financial Integrity Chief Raymond Baker.
And that's a conservative estimate, because that estimate is based on what we can reasonably see in the data that is available to us, balance of payments data and trade data.
Tax havens help facilitate corruption because the sums skimmed from businesses and governments become invisible and then can be used to finance criminal activities such as drug and gun dealing or buying elected officials. As Kenya and some other African states move to attract cash by creating tax havens of themselves, the presence of this wealth allegedly doesn't benefit the people at large, as Tax Justice Network's Cobham via Skype asserts.
The people who benefit from that activity tend to be a very small group of people, professionals and members of the governing elite, at the top of the income distribution. So actually what you find is that you're worsening inequality. It's almost the opposite of a development strategy that would support broad-based improvement for people further down the income distribution.
While some might criticize Kenya and other tax haven-minded African states, Global Financial Integrity's Raymond Baker says what they are doing only mimics what has been going on for decades in the so-called developed world.
The thing that we don't want to admit to ourselves is that we in the West created every single element of the shadow financial system. Tax havens, secrecy jurisdictions, disguised corporations, anonymous trust accounts, fake foundations, money laundering techniques, and so forth. Every single bit of this has been done by us.
Pan-African entities, including the African Union and ECOWAS, have responded to the continent's tax haven trend with raised voices about the necessity for tax compliance. But the holders of wealth will always find shelter and privacy somewhere. Jeffrey Young, VOA News, Washington.